What's happening, gang? Hope this finds everybody well. Welcome back to the Built for Pressure podcast with me, Will Foden. A bit of a different take today, reporting live on the weekend. As those that have been watching the news will know, that in Dubai we've been having missiles and shrapnel flying across the country, which has obviously ceased most movement around the place. I'm going to give you a bit of an insight about what's been happening here, what I've been doing, how I've been dealing with it. I know there's other people that have been frightened, scared, or vice versa. I'll tell you some stories about some people who are going absolutely wild downstairs last night. But actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the pieces of the puzzle that I was using whilst I was in that frame of mind. Because I think the name of the game when it comes down to performance is actually you sink to the levels of your standards. But the reality is what I want to demonstrate is understanding how to develop mental toughness and resilience, even though when you are scared. Inside my company, we run an immersion event, which basically is usually quarterly, whether in the UK, Singapore, Dubai. We've worked in Saudi Arabia. Ambition of doing it is always simple: bringing like-minded individuals together to push their limits and actually see what their true capacity is. We had 10 people, 11 including me, at Chalk Training Ground. Absolutely wicked place, lovely people, and I really appreciate them having us. And a very, very simple session. Come in. Upper body strength session, half an hour of team, we call it Bosch, just capacity-based work, just to see where we're at, and actually effort is always currency in that scenario, some recovery, and actually having some connection together when it comes down to just going out for dinner. I think a lot of the time when it comes down to high performers in my field, they feel extremely lonely because they're not actually understood when it comes down to the level of ambition, the level of acquisition, what they actually put into their job, and vice versa. They actually feel quite an alien when it comes down to those around them, especially those that used to work alongside. So anyway, I think that's the name of the game heading into this year and beyond. Is Built for Pressure is going to be a hub for CEOs, executives, elite level operators who want to actually push their limits, and actually give them a place to actually connect with. But anyway, I digress. We were in the gym, hitting a body set. Shout out to Mr. John Mascal, my client. He smashed a 120 PB. And we started hearing big thuds and big, obviously, bomb noises. And people started checking their phones. We were just getting changed, getting ready. And then what actually happened was we started getting information that shrapnel, then we thought it was missiles, but we now know it was shrapnel. It was actually landing quite close by, not actually that far away from people's houses. And for obvious reasons, we pulled the plug. Not more so we were safe, but actually the reality is that, especially if you're a parent, you'll understand that you want to be as close to your family as possible when they're scared. So again, extremely frustrating from my side, because then I proceeded to just sit there for an hour and a half and do arms and conditioning by myself just because I had nothing else to do. And it hadn't really sunk in. I hadn't really acknowledged it. I hadn't seen it. I just knew that we were in a bit of a compromised situation. Now, as the evening went on, there was more and more missiles, more and more news, more and more media around the UAE defense systems doing their job, which again, to be fair, amazing. I think they've had 200 and something rockets and drones across the country, and barely any of them have landed. I think there's been one fatality, which again is horrendous, but it could have been a lot worse. And I think the reality then was, I've never been in a war zone. I've never been in a place where I have been unsafe. I've never been in a place in that context. I have been in extremely treacherous environments before where I've been compromised, whether it's getting kicked, having my legs snapped in half by a horse, having my lung collapse, nearly having a heart attack on an Ironman. I've been close to physical, compromise. But this is very, very different. When you're in this sort of territory, what was going through my mind is you start to project yourself into the future and start being catastrophizing what you're doing. You start trying to think of hyper analytical scenarios that don't actually realistically, are they going to happen or not? Now, what I want to do is I'm going to show you a demonstration of how I've done this real time. Ironically, my company's called Built for Pressure, and this is probably the most amount of pressure you'll be under, and you start looking this in the face. But more so, this has taken years for me to not get emotional. I've never had, it was weird. I was very calm. Not that I wasn't scared, because I think that's what a lot of people get this wrong. They think that they in that scenario, they're either action man and they think they're Rambo, or they're absolutely crapping themselves and they're a liability. I've always said to myself, in times of chaos, I'm an asset. And I took what I usually do inside of my process and what I work with my customers with, and I used it real time. You're looking for a state of acceptance, how to find a way into a new navigating environment. We did this in the immersion last year in Dubai with Gareth Timmins, talking about those 5 stages. We've got it starts with denial. This is not happening to me. You pretend that it's not there. You then go into anger, frustration that you're actually compromised, and you actually start taking it personally and emotionally, and that's where you start to get frustrated. You then start bargaining to try and claw back that emotional state, that emotional ground that you've lost. And actually, how can you compromise in that situation? When the reality is that you can't. You then go into a mini depression, which is actually you can't actually physically or mentally take that on board. And you're in depression. There is a state. It's not like normal depression, manic depression, and that kind of thing. And then what you're trying to actually reach is the stage of acceptance, because the stage of acceptance means that you realize that you're compromised. The game has changed, and then what you actually need to do is you need to move forward. The reality in that scenario was it was coming. I went and I got food. I came back to my room, and then we started getting more drone strikes. The Fairmont was then actually hit. Charlie Hagger, one of my friends and one of my customers, came to my to pick me up. We were out to go for dinner, and we had a massive explosion. Right then, we thought that was a missile close by. So for obvious reasons, we evacuated the building, moved into the car park, which is underground, and waited there for 40 minutes. Actually, with new news coming in, what had happened is an aircraft missile had hit. The missile coming in. What they're trying to do is shoot US air bases. They're not trying to shoot people in the UAE or the civilians, to my knowledge. So it hit a missile and the shrapnel fell off. Basically, it hit right in front of the Fairmont, landed on a car and blew up 5 cars. So the explosion was massive because an indirect hit. It wasn't a targeted hit to civilians. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't know that. Obviously, in our context, I'd packed my room. I'd slung my stuff in my bag. I had my bag. I tried to figure out how to get everything out of there because I was going to go to Charlie's house. But at that point, I actually realised probably the safest thing for me to do is actually to stay where I was. I knew where my exit strategy was. I knew what I needed to do if it all did go south. I know that I don't know this area, but it's the only area that I do know in Dubai, which is around where I live. So we got Charlie off, got him back home, and I went to bed. Now, in that scenario, you can imagine that your sleep is absolutely compromised and you don't know what the hell's going on and you're just waiting for something to happen. At 12:30 in the morning, my phone started going absolutely bonkers with MOI message basically saying, get out, you stay in your room, stay safe, there's missiles coming, but it basically made you feel like it was imminent. In that moment, you have only one thing on your mind, is like what to do next. I in the day, I had actually reached out to people who I knew had been in war zones. Again, I'm a big believer in actually asking people that have been there, and friends of mine who are Marines, who are, I've got people inside of my process who encounter terrorism and who have worked in close protection, sending them messages and asking them exact strategies and what to do, actually was very reassuring for me. And I think people who are listening to this is a bit personal because I'm giving you an inloaded insight about what's happening this weekend. But the reality is that most people, they don't ask for feedback, and they try and be resilient, pure on aggression and emotion. That's going to get you nowhere. I wanted to know my SOP of how to get out of here and be safe, which was create a boot bag, which is basically, that's got all my kit in that I would need for the next however many days, passport, money, whatever, computers, all my real valuable stuff. Everything else was in my bag in my room. 2, my clothes, my shoes and everything were lined up so I could literally just slip them straight on and get out of the house. 3, had water in my bag. 4, I knew how to get down. I'd never take the escalator in that scenario, and I go down the stairs. So I knew the exit strategy, which again was reassuring. The irony was at 12:30, I actually went down to the car park. I was there nearly 2 hours. Loads of kids and families and all that kind of stuff were there. Everyone was all just a bit scared. But something like that happened, and I think this is what I'm trying to get across here, is that I'm not superhuman, and I'm not saying that I was hard and I'm not scared, because the reality is that I've never been in this scenario before, and all I'm doing is going off previous experience. But I came down the stairs the first time, and I had the geezer who must be 6'4", 6'5", 120 kegs, massive unit. We heard a bang and he just crumbled, started crying. I don't want to die. And the thing going through my head was not I wouldn't want to die. It was like, where do I need to go and what's my next move? And it's not that I'm perfect. It's just that he was denying what was going on. And then when the reality was that there was bombshells going off, he couldn't handle it. And that's the hardest thing for most people, is what they don't do is they can't separate the scenario, what they need to do next. And that's what we talk about, stages of acceptance. I've used that framework for years, and I've put that through my brain through the paces when it comes down to emotional fortitude. And the reality is that when you are reactive, scared, or running off fear, your emotions are just trying to find a pattern. And in times you can't find a pattern, that's when you get overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, you're useless. The game is you don't want to be a liability. You need to be an asset. And in my head, it was like, instead of me, it's very overwhelming. If you were to close your eyes in that scenario, you could put all sorts of stories in your head about going home and all that kind of shit. That's not going to help you. Where the reality is, the only thing that can help you is your next move. So again, I'm reporting this live from Dubai. I'm going to put this out today, unusually, because I usually put it out on a Tuesday. But I wanted to get this off my chest because I sort of reviewed my performance, so to speak. Because again, unsure what the lay of the land is at the moment. I don't know what's going on. We don't know I'm supposed to fly home tomorrow. If I get home tomorrow, great. If I don't get home tomorrow, I don't know. There's plans in place. But the point is that in times of chaos like this, there's a massive lesson of how you make yourself level up and become an asset in times of challenge. If you're an executive, CEO, a business leader, someone who's pushing their limits, this is an extreme case of what we're looking at when it comes down to fortitude. And I think a lot of the time in this realm, people look into military practices for corporate outcomes. This is the real deal. And I'm filming this in my room currently, in my Wicked Suite, which again, you can't really see that because the camera's following my face. But the state remains the same. I've actually written this out onto a Substack page, so if you'd like to go follow that, you've prepared to read it, it's out there right now. Vice versa, I appreciate you if you've watched this, listened to this, and again, sent me a text message, because again, I'm safe and well, I'm happy, well, within reason. I'd much rather be at home with my lovely wife and child, but we've got to do what we can do. I will keep everybody updated. I appreciate everybody's kind words, and vice versa. I'll catch up with you guys soon.